Friends, we will continue with the TDS topic, and today we will cover all the remaining sections and also the procedural aspects involved in the TDS. Now, section 194I, it deals with TDS on rent. TDS on rent and section 194I many number of times appeared in the exam. That is, we have few issues also in this, but for that there should not be much of a problem in remembering this. That is, any person not being an individual in HUF. Of course, for individual and HUF also, this 194I provisions will come into play the moment such individual or HUF is subjected to the tax audit under section 44AB is the point. Now, at what rate that is to be deducted? At the rate of 2% in case you are letting out your machinery or plant or equipment, and at the rate of 10% if it is letting out of the land and building, of course including factory building and land appurtenant to such a building and furniture and fittings. This will attract 10% of the TDS. And most important thing is, if your rent is not exceeding 1,80,000, then there is no requirement to deduct the tax at a source. Let us suppose there is a property owned by the co-owners. Whether the TDS requirement is there, how we are deciding what is the each co-owner's share in that particular rent. In case if each co-owner's share is exceeding 1,80,000 rupees, then only TDS requirement comes into play. Other way around, even if it is 3 lakhs and there are 2 co-owners, then each is 1,50,000, 1,50,000, then there is no need for deducting the tax at a source is a point. So basically, this is what the core content of that particular 194I, we have to take up the issues. But write down section 194I. Section 194I, TDS on rent. Of course, 194I is applicable when TDS is paid on rent. This is for residents when the rent is paid. So, first, rate of TDS. Rate of TDS. A. 2% for use of machinery or plant and equipment. Machinery or plant and equipment. Then friends, 10%, next point, 10% for the use of land and building, land or building, or land appurtenant to building or furniture and fittings, Then friends, note 1, that is for individuals and HUF. For individuals and HUF, 194I provisions are applicable. 194I provisions are applicable if they are subjected to the provisions of tax audit under section 44AB. Tax audit under section 44AB. Then friends, note 2. In case if the rent does not exceed rupees 1,80,000, in case if the rent does not exceed rupees 1,80,000, then no deduction shall be made. Then friends, note 3. In case of co-owners, the limit of rupees 1,80,000, shall be applicable to each of the co-owners, separately, Then friends, to take up the different issues associated with the TDS on rent, the first issue before us is, see, airlines. Now, airlines, what they are doing, they take their aircraft and land it in the airport and again make a takeoff from the airport. So whatever that airlines company is paying to the airport, will this also amount to the rent, and will it attract your 194I? Further, what is stated is, basically what is being paid is for using the land. So definitely this comes under rent, and provisions of section 194I will have an application. Write down the point, that is, parking the aircraft in the airport, is use of the land, therefore landing and parking fee were definitely rent within the meaning of provisions of section 194I, Then friends, next issue is non-refundable deposit. Let us suppose I am paying a deposit and it is non-refundable. It is as good as I am paying the rent, because I am not going to get back. Whatever I am paying, whatever may be the name that I give, ultimately it is for using the land or the building. So non-refundable deposit if you are giving, then TDS is to be deducted. Write down, that is, in case where tenant makes a non-refundable deposit, makes a non-refundable deposit, tax would have to be deducted at a source. Tax would have to be deducted at source. Friends, let us suppose if you are giving the deposit to the landlord and that you are going to get the interest, let us suppose. Will that interest will get attracted to the TDS provisions? Yes, under section 194A of the income tax. Write down. That is, if a deposit carries interest, then tax is to be deducted. On the amount of interest, under section 194A, Then friends, we have the next issue. There is a security deposit, let us suppose. See, today I am giving the security deposit to Vardhan. I am the tenant of Vardhan. Vardhan is subjected to tax audit under 44AB. I am paying a rent to Vardhan. He asked for a security deposit. What for the security deposit? There is always a possibility. Vardhan may go to Chittur and I may not be paying a rent for 1 or 2 months. By the time Vardhan comes, doors are open that I left the premises. Possibility is there or not? Similarly, there could be good furniture Mr. Vardhan might be giving to me. Probably at the end of the 3 months or 6 months, I may be spoiling all that and may be leaving the premises. Then in that situation, the security deposit is going to be adjusted towards the rent and what I am spoiling of his furniture and all. So when the TDS requirement comes into play, see, is it at the time when I gave the security deposit, or is it at the time when that security deposit is being adjusted? The answer for that is TDS is to be deducted and remitted when that deposit is being adjusted towards the rent. Write down. TDS on security deposits. Make it side heading and write down. No TDS is required. No TDS is required at the time of payment of security deposit. At the time of paying security deposits. However, TDS has to be deducted. TDS has to be deducted when security deposit has been adjusted. When security deposit has been adjusted. Then friends, I move to the next issue. TDS on warehousing charges. TDS on warehousing charges, you give whatever the name. Ultimately for usage of building or usage of the land or for usage of the furniture, usage of plant and machinery, in case if you are going to pay anything, whatever may be the name that you give, it will attract the provisions of section 194I. Write down. That is TDS on warehousing charges. TDS on warehousing charges will come under the purview of section 194I. As these are being paid for usage of building. See, sometimes the tenant may be making the payment of municipal taxes, ground rent. Apart from the rent, he may be also paying the municipal taxes and the ground rent. Is the TDS is required to be deducted on such amount also? The answer is no. Because basically what he is paying is towards municipal taxes and the ground rent. So it is not the amount is being paid to the landlord. Since it is not being paid to the landlord, law is kind enough to say here that municipal taxes and ground rent what the SSC is making the payment does not attract the TDS. Of course, Krishna Reddy is already with a smile. What is it? What is it, sir? I don't find logic in it. After all, it is the obligation of the landlord that is being met by the tenant. Just because tenant agreed to reduce, tenant agrees to pay the municipal taxes and the ground rent, probably the rent might have got reduced. In wealth tax you say, if municipal taxes are met by the tenant, it is to be added back and all those things. Mr. Krishna Reddy, only thing that I can tell you is, logic and tax may not go together in many situations. Probably the good intention behind this relaxation could be that government is at least happy that municipal taxes are being paid in time, ground rent is being paid in time. Probably that might have made them to take a relaxation on this view, but other way around, if you look at in an argumentative situation, of course, unless there is a different views, CBDT will not come into play. CBDT has given a clarification stating that this does not attract the TDS. Write down. That is, the basis of tax deduction at source. The basis of tax deduction at source under section 194I, under section 194I is income by way of rent, is income by way of rent. Thus municipal taxes, ground rent borne by tenant, no TDS on such a sum. No TDS means no tax to be deducted at source. Then friends, the next issue is whether section 194I is applicable to the rent paid for the use of only a part or portion of any land or building. Yes, because if you look at 194I, it clearly says that rent paid for using the land or building and land appurtenant thereto. So Even if you are using a part of the land or land appurtenant to the building, still it attracts section 194I as a point. Write down, that is a definition of the term. Definition of the term. Any land or any building would include a portion of land and building. Would include a portion of land and building. Then friends, the next issue before me is whether tax is to be deducted on advance rent. Yes, on security deposit I said only when it is adjusted. Non-refundable deposit at the time when it is being paid. Now what is the status of advance rent? Advance rent, at the time of payment itself you need to deduct the tax at source, not to wait till such time when this advance rent is being adjusted as a point. Write down, tax is to be deducted on advance payment of rent, Then friends, will a payment to the hotels, will it attract the TDS provisions? See, if there is a company and on a regular basis it takes the hotel accommodation, definitely it needs deduction of the tax at source. But sometimes it may so happen that companies may enter into an rate contract agreements. That is only that irrespective of the prevailing rates for this particular year, whenever we come, you have to give us the accommodation at a fixed rate. If that is the case and it is not that hotel is being taken on a regular basis, then no TDS. Write down, that is TDS on payments made to the hotel, TDS on payments made to the hotel. Is in the nature of lease so long as accommodation is taken, on a regular basis, What do you mean by regular basis, friends? Write down, note, where earmarked rooms are let out, for a specified rate, and a specified period, they would be construed to be accommodation made available on a regular basis. Then friends, TDS on service tax component on the rental income. Commercial letting and all, what will happen friends? Service tax provisions are there. Now the bill is coming with rent and service tax thereon. Now on the total of the rent plus service tax, you are supposed to deduct the tax at source, or only on the rent portion you are supposed to deduct the tax at source. For this, the clarification part given through circular is, after all, service tax is only a reimbursement kind of thing, or other way around, it's being collected and it's being remitted. Nothing comes to the landlord. So TDS is to be deducted only on the rent portion, not on the service tax portion. But this is not the case with the professionals. Let us suppose Chakravarti Associates chartered accountant firm is rendering the services. That is professional remuneration, add service tax on the total amount you need to deduct the TDS is a point. Whereas this is not the case with the rent. Write down. That is TDS should not be deducted on service tax component of rental income. Service tax component of a rental income. What is the reason? That is, since service tax paid by the tenant does not partake the nature of income, of the landlord. However, here what you need to make a note, service tax on professional fees is to be included in the professional fees. Service tax on professional fees is to be included in the professional fees, and TDS is to be deducted on the gross amount, including service tax. See friends, that is another issue before us is, that is we have cold storage units. People will keep their material in that cold storage. Whatever that they are paying, will it attract the provisions of section 194I? Of course, for this CBDT issued a circular clarifying the position, stating that the main function of the cold storage is to preserve the perishable goods and that is all being done by the mechanical process, and storage of such goods is only incidental in nature. So customer is also not given any right to use demarcated space or place or machinery in the cold store. So he will not become the tenant for that particular cold storage. Therefore, the provisions of section 194I are not getting attracted. But friends, please to remember that gets attracted to 194C, contractual payment. Write down. That is a cold storage charges. Cold storage charges does not attract provisions of section 194I, provisions of section 194I. If anybody asks you what is the reason for it, basically if I say rent, if I go to Prakash and ask him to let to me a particular building, he will show me what is the place where I have to stay. If I ask Prakash to allow me to use the plant and machinery, he will show me which plant and machinery I have to use. But when I take my perishable items, fish or vegetables, and give it to the cold storage fellow, he can keep at any place. He don't earmark anything for me. He keeps, what is it, according to his own availability and all. He will keep, only thing he will ensure that the item will not get perished. But when we talk about the rent, specific place must be earmarked, specific item need to be identified. Since that is not being done here, we say the cold storage charges which we are paying to preserve the perishables does not come under the purview of section 194I, whereas 194C provisions do get attracted. Write down continuation, that is provisions of section 194C. Provisions of section 194C will be applicable to the amounts paid, as cooling charges, by the customers of a cold storage, Friends, that is the end of the TDS provisions on the rent. We have spent good amount of the time on it, but it really makes a sense because, as I already explained, it is 194C, 194I, 194J, 192. These are the sections. Compulsorily you will see these things in your examination paper. So concentration must be there. And I assure and reassure that you don't have something surprise in the examination paper. All what you have written, out of that only something is to be tested, and it was tested like that only. For this purpose only you are supposed to go to a teacher. Absolute confidence should be there. And again and again, let me tell you before I start section 194J, the whole intention in asking the students to write is, one is for continuity, second is concentrated listening, third is unless they got synopsis points, it would be very damn difficult to revise. Because many times when direct access paper students fail, they only say that, sir, we failed not because we have not read, we were not able to revise. What is the reason why you are not able to revise? Because the subject is vast. So how do we try to bring it to the synopsis? That is most important. Hope you are all enjoying the lecture. Now continuing with it, section 194J, that is TDS on fees for professional or technical services. Here also, if you see, friends, there is no much that is different from what we have learned in the earlier sections. One thing I should be clear is the rate of TDS. The rate of TDS continues to be that as a 10%, and then there is a threshold limit. Then it is not applicable to the individual and HF unless and otherwise they are being subjected to tax audit under section 44AB. So these are the things. Apart from that, of course, here also we have issues, just like how we have in the rent. Write down, friends, TDS on fees for professional or technical services, 194J. Of course, these sections are applicable to the resident only. So now point number 1, individuals and HUF, who are subjected to tax audit, will be subjected to the, or will be governed by the provisions of section 194J. Provisions of section 194J. Of course, here you should understand one point, that is 194J provisions are applicable for the professional fees, that is for the professional services, technical services, royalty also, and also the one which is covered by section 28(5)(a). What is this? 28(5)(a). That is non-competing fees. That is, if you accept not to carry on a particular business, not to, part with technical know-how, then if any amount is being given, then it will be treated as your business income, is what is being stated by 28 clause 5A. So even that particular amount also gets attracted to 194J provision. So 4 items are being covered by 194J. One is professional services, technical services, royalty and non-competing fees, or the one which is covered by section 28 clause 5E. Then write down rate of TDS 10%. Then threshold limit or amount below which 194J is not applicable. Make it side heading, that is, in case the amount does not exceed, 30,000 during the financial year, then section 194J will not be applicable. That is no TDS. So friends, here unlike your 194C where it is stated below 30,000 or even if it is more than 30,000, overall 75,000 that is there, that is not there with respect to your professional and technical services is the point that you should remember. Then see, services rendered by the sports person, umpires, coaches, team physician, event managers, commentators and anchors. These also would come under the professional services and 194J will have an application. Then applicability of the provisions of section 194J to the third party administrators. Today I met with an accident, the next moment ambulance come and the next moment third party administrator point comes. Because the moment I am entering into the hospital they are asking, do you have the mediclaim? We have an agent. You don't worry, happily get operated. Not only for this, for all of your diseases. We will give the claim to be pursued by the third party administrator. Now what the hospital is going to make the payment? Will these payments to third party administrators will it attract 194J provisions. Write down. This is a very big subject. So write down, that is section 194J. Section 194J will be applicable in respect of transactions, by third party administrators, with hospitals. Right. Because somebody questioned, the third party administrator, is he providing service to the patient or to the hospital? See, what is being stated here is, direct beneficiary is the patient, indirect beneficiary is the hospital, but still it comes under the 194J, because the circular as it reads, what is stated is, there is no stipulation that professional services have to be necessarily rendered to the person who makes the payment to the hospital. So in any case, we are not going in deep into the circular. In examination point of view, if I look at with a lesser discussion, yes, whatever the payments to the third party administrators are the transactions of third party administrators with the hospitals that come under section 194. J is the point. Now next issue before me is, let us suppose a non-resident or a non-resident takes the professional services of chartered accountants, lawyers, advocates, solicitors. Then that non-resident makes the payment to this chartered accountant. Will it attract the provisions of your 194J? For this, a clarification is given by the CBDT stating that, keeping in view of the practical difficulties when firm of chartered accountants and lawyers receives the fee from foreign clients outside India, since it is difficult for these foreign clients to deduct the TDS, they are being relaxed. Other way around, no, if you keep too many, hurdles, probably professionals of India may not get, professional opportunities from the foreign countries. Okay, CBDT might have relaxed. That is, Indian professionals are being well respected and their services are well required even outside India, just for the simple reason that TDS obligations are being kept on the payers. Probably it may give administrative difficulty for them, that made them to relax this. Write down, no TDS on professional fees, no TDS on professional fees paid by non-residents, to the chartered accountants and lawyers, Then friends, I move to 194 LA, that is payment of compensation on acquisition of certain immobile property. When immobile property is being acquired, then compensation is to be paid. Will such compensation will get attracted to the provisions of the TDS? Yes, under section 194 LA. Of course, what is the rate at which TDS is to be deducted? It is at 10%, and when the aggregate amount of it does not exceed rupees 1 lakh during the financial year, there is no need for deducting the tax at source. But this I am not asking you to write, just keep it in the mind. Then 194 LB, income by way of interest from infrastructure debt fund. Since this is being inserted by the Finance Act of 2011, I am expecting the students to write. But for that, in a normal situation, these type of provisions will not have much of a place in your examination paper. But if it is an amendment, definitely you should refer all the amendments and go to the exam. Of course, as a matter of revision, I promise the students that all the amendments, there are about 32 to 33 amendments that are there, both that is in your direct access, all are being well taken in a separate session on amendments. Notwithstanding that, love to write. Section 194 LB. Section 194 LB, income by way of interest, income by way of interest from infrastructure debt fund, from infrastructure debt fund, paid to non-resident only, paid to non-resident only. Then that is rate of TDS is 5%. Rate of TDS is 5%. Friends, we have section 195. What that section 195 discusses about? TDS on payments to the non-residents. So far, many sections which you have studied are applicable to the residents. So 195 deals with whatever the payments that you make to the non-residents that will attract the TDS provisions. But here the point is, with respect to the residents, fixed percentiles and all are being given in different sections so far which we have discussed. With respect to the non-residents, when we discuss the non-resident taxation, you will find that certain incomes of the non-residents will be subjected to the tax at a, what is it, flat rate, not the slab rate. So in respect of all those incomes which are subjected to the flat rate taxation, the TDS rate also continues to be same. So what he is subjected to the tax, that is to be deducted at source. Who said so? Section 195 says so. So unless you are perfect with the non-resident taxation, here in detail discussion does not make any sense. Of course, here the point is straight, what rate their incomes are getting subjected to the tax, you have to deduct the tax at the source and remit the same to the government is the only point that I am giving it. Then friends, does the payment of chartered fee to a non-resident, see, let me not read this particular case, but it is being stated as being most important. Kanchanaganga Seafoods Limited versus CIT. What is the core concept in it? That let us not get by line to line reading of it. Please keep it in your mind. See, Vardhan Me is having an activity. What is that activity, you know? Going to the sea and catching the fish. How we will go into the sea? We require a ship, a boat, something should be there, na? Titanic ship, all of you know, but we are not going in Titanic ship. But ship, let us suppose, ship means not 100 rupees, 200 rupees. It is a huge investment. Me and he will not be able to afford to purchase the ships. We only take the ships. And what is our agreement with the other person who happens to be a non-resident? That we are very good fishermen, we catch very good amount of fish, we will go into the sea, catch the fish and get the fish and give you 85% of it. We only have 15%, right? Of course, just to bring you into the concept I am saying, otherwise my business or Vardhan business is not doing that. But here the whole lot of point is, when for taking that ship and giving 85% of the value of the fish, will it attract the provisions of your TDS? The answer for this is, it do attract, and you need to deduct the tax at source and remit the same to the government, failing of which you will be treated as SEC deemed to be in default, and you will be subjected to the interest and penalty provisions. Just make note. That is payment of charter fee. Payment of charter fee to a non-resident, by way of percentage of fish catch, done outside the territorial waters, of India, but brought into India for verification and evaluation, before a dispatch of the same, to the non-resident, will attract the provisions of TDS under section 195. Failure to do so attract the penal and interest, penalty and interest. Note, there is TDS provisions under section 195 are attracted even if charter fee is payable in kind. That is, we are not making sale of the fish. Fish only we are giving. 100 fish we catch, 85 fish we are giving. Even whether it is paid in cash or in kind, charter fee will get attracted to the provisions of section 195.